Oh, thanks, Amy. Amy says she loves it and wouldn't miss it. Yeah, you're a true loyal wildlife gardener. um, anyway, welcome back, everyone. And you are very lucky to be joined by Shaun today, who's the nursery manager at Grow Wilder. So he grows wildflowers all year round and is so busy, especially now. So we're really grateful, Shaun. And he's made a wonderful PowerPoint that yeah, and if you've got any questions, he doesn't mind you interrupting, but as always, if you'd rather write them in the chat, you can do that. So yeah, let's get started. Shaun, over to you.
Right, good evening, everyone. So I'm Shaun. As Steph said, I manage the wildflower nursery at Grow Wilder. The nursery we've been running the wildflower nursery for 10 years now. And I actually came as a volunteer to Grow Wilder in 2013, August, I remember. I went past on the bus one day. And I soon became quite an involved volunteer. And when the wildflower nursery started, we had some funding to pay me 1 day a week. And then it sort of went from there, 1 to 2 days, 2.5 days, 3 days, and here I am. So yes, we grow native wildflowers. So I'm going to start a little slideshow and tell you a little bit about wildflowers. And we're going to look mainly today about using wildflowers in a wildflower lawn or a mini meadow. And I'm aware that I've focused it mostly on what we've been doing at Grow Wilder, that we've been helping with public spaces. I'm just gonna, I'll just give you the title. There we go, that's got somebody else in the waiting room. So yeah, we've been helping with various public spaces for mini meadows. So you may have seen the planting at College Green in front of the cathedral there. Yeah, you should be getting the slides. No, okay, I'm not started the slides yet. I just wanted the title one up. Let me try again.
No, not yet, Shaun.
Oh right, I didn't press the share. There you go. You got it now.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yes, I was saying that we've over the last 3 years we've helped with other organisations to start three mini meadows. The first one was College Green. The second one was Clifton Hill Meadow in Clifton. You'll see some photos of that. And the third one was last year, St Mary Redcliffe, the church, and we've done some in the front of there. And you'll be, if you go down, I've heard that they've just started flowering. But I'm aware that not everybody's got a nice bit of grass in front of a big church or a bit of grass in Clifton. So I will emphasize that you can do this on any scale. Like the little piece we've done at Grow Wilder is about 10 meters square, so 3 meters by 3 meters, something like that. Or even you could do a little tiny wildflower lawn in a pot about 2 foot across or something. You could have a very little lawn in there with high diversity of wildflowers, and you can also do a mini meadow in a pot. And I will show you a picture of one of those. So I'm going to go on to the first slide. So let's see if this is going to work. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about native wildflowers. The native wildflowers are the plants that have grown in Britain for centuries, millennia. But with our climate in Britain, we can grow flowers from all over the world. We can grow plants from Africa, China, New Zealand, South America, North America, Japan. So for our gardens and growing spaces, we've got a vast number of plants to draw on. And then what I want to say is, why is it good to put some native wildflowers in your garden? Like all these, there's lots of lovely plants out there from other countries, and they're great to have some of those in your garden because they can provide nectar and pollen for bees, butterflies, beetles, all the things that pollinate the flowers. But the thing about the native wildflowers is, as well as providing the bees and things with nectar and pollen, they can provide them with habitat, or they can provide them with but a lot of the insects are adapted to live with our native plants. So, for example, I've got a couple of examples. Let's pick one up in a minute. So, for example, the dandelion. Some people like dandelions. I love dandelions. Some people don't like them in their lawns. Some people don't like them in their garden. But this is a fact I've just learned at the weekend, that the dandelion, the leaves of the dandelion are the food plant for the caterpillars of the garden tiger moth. So you can see that beautiful, colourful moth, which is quite common. You might have it in your growing space. And then a little bit of research, and I found that the dandelion is actually a food plant for the caterpillars of like loads of different moths. So all those strange and exotic names, moths have some great names. So we've got the ribboned wave, the orange swift, the shark, a moth that's called the shark, the flame, the gothic, the Hebrew character, and the large yellow underwing. So the caterpillars rely on the dandelion. So if you've got, some of them can eat other plants, but if you haven't got dandelions, then you may not have these moths, or may not have habitat for these moths. And so a couple more examples. A plant called kidney vetch that has yellow flowers. We grow it to grow wilder. It grows up near Parkway Station. It grows in South Bristol. And it's the only plant that the caterpillars of the small blue butterfly will live on. And so we've actually got, and it's a rare-ish butterfly. We've only got 2 or 3 colonies in Bristol of this butterfly. And so the one of them is up behind Parkway Station by the Park and Ride. And the flower shows, the picture shows the stage at which the butterflies like to lay their eggs, at the point where the flower is half open and half finished. So they're very precise. That some butterflies are very particular about where and when they lay their eggs. So it's laying its egg, it could be laying its eggs on those flowers, and then the caterpillars, as they develop, they eat the flowers, but then they eat the seeds of the plant. So not so good for the plant. And I was talking to somebody at the weekend, and he said he had kidney vetch on a green roof on a shed, and he did actually get small blue butterflies. So that was really impressive. And then I got another couple of examples. So these are examples from Grow Wilder. So these are 2 plants that weren't at Grow Wilder before we planted them. So honeysuckle, which you're probably familiar with, honeysuckle that we've planted, lots of honeysuckle planted now at Grow Wilder. Great plant because it's a climber, it's good for feeding moths. And then common Cromwell is a native plant, small white flowers. Both these plants we planted at Grow Wilder in the last 10 years, probably both of them at least 5-6 years ago. And we do regular we catch moths, do regular moth trapping to see what's here. And we've got the early grey moth that feeds, the caterpillar feeds on the honeysuckle. And we've got the Cromwell moth, the caterpillar feeds on common Cromwell. And so they're here because we planted the plants that they eat. So yeah, it shows that if the more diversity of wildflowers and other flowers you've got in the garden, the more diversity of insects you're going to support. And that then supports more birds. Like birds feed on hundreds of insects a day. So what I wanted to say is that so I'm sitting here at Grow Wild, I'm sitting at my desk. I've got a nice background on with the willow circle at Grow Wilder, but I've got the pleasure of sitting it's on the second floor, it's upstairs. I can look out the window and I can see blossom on trees. That's quite a nice little office space to have. I wanted to just look at some actual real flowers, so we're just not looking at slides. And I wondered if you would, I don't know if you've done any exercises where you've just gone outside for a couple of minutes and or look out the window if you've got, or you can see if you see a green space, or you can just go out in the green space for a couple of minutes. And I wanted to just see what you can see, what flowers you can see in flower. So I've done this earlier on site, and I'll let you know what I saw at Grow Wilder. But just have a little bit of look at what flowers you can see, because what I'm really noticing this year, more than any other previous years, is the seasonality of flowers. How, like, we saw the apple blossom, then we saw the May flowers. And I wonder if people could just take 2 minutes just to even look out the window pop outside the back door and see 4 or 5 wildflowers that you can see in your garden or nearby green space or growing space, and pop some names in the chat just so we can just see what people have got in their gardens or what they can see out the windows. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah, got a thumbs up from Steph. So I've done my list earlier, so I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to pop some things in the chat. Let me
Okay, should we come back at 45 or less?
45 is good. It gives you 4 minutes. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Steph.
I'm going to go too.
Good. Okay. Everybody back?
Yes.
Let me just have a look then. So just looking at some of the nice things you put in the chat. So we've got bluebells, buttercups, cow parsley, daisies, herb robert, red campion. So herb robert, a little pink flower that's quite common around the city and in gardens. Forget-me-nots, cuckoo flowers, red dead nettles, lady's vegetable, lavender, that's a nice early lavender, celandine, daisies, lily of the valley, borage, lots of really nice stuff. So it sounds like pollinators are doing pretty well already. So buttercups, yeah, lots of buttercups out at the moment. Yeah, just really nice. And also to recognize the seasonality. I've just really noticed this year how the apple blossom is followed by the May blossom. Probably has focused a little bit because I did a blossom walk here here at Grow Wilder. So my 5 that I this was just going out just on the Grow Wilder site. I've got red campion, so a nice pink flower that grows in woodland edges, which we planted. I've got the hawthorn, lots of hawthorn here. 3-cornered leek, little white flower. It is an invasive plant, but it's also edible. So if you've got too much of it, you can eat it. Tastes garlicky, oniony. Cow parsley, lots of cow parsley here, and creeping buttercup, so lots of yellow. So just nice just to see where we are in the season, late spring. And what I can see is, looking at meadows and lawns, there's lots of things that are going to come very shortly. So towards the end of May, early June is a great time for wildflowers in wildflower lawns and meadows. So let's just go back to the slide. So obviously this is one part of the course, and I just wanted, being as we run the wildflower nursery, we aim to help people to find ways of using wildflowers in the garden. So the 2 I'm going to talk about today are the wildflower lawn and the mini meadow. Obviously you can, both of those you can do in a container or a raised bed, or containers and raised beds. Containers are great for growing wildflowers in, like we grow all our wildflowers in pots, so just put them in a bigger pot gives them more room, they can grow bigger. Ponds and bog gardens, you've already had a good look at those on the course, and lots of the marginal plant, we sell all the marginal wildflowers that grow around the edge of the pond. And then also planting in partial shade, that it's good to bear in mind, like if you've got a tree in a garden, you've got something that's a bit shady, or your garden is north facing, or your growing space is north facing, you've got some part of the day, so partial shade. So just some of the ways you can use wildflowers, but we're going to talk about those first 2. So wildflower lawns. So what is a wildflower lawn? So most people's lawns, many lawns have dandelions and daisies. Unless, like, I don't expect anybody here sprays their lawn with WECA to get rid of anything except for grass. So you've probably got dandelions and daisies, probably got some clover, you've probably got other things that you haven't, you've got probably other things as well. So with a wildflower lawn, we've got one at Grow Wilder, we're still working on it. It can take a while to get it more diverse. But what we're aiming to do with a wildflower lawn is we're aiming to get more species in there that can fill the sort of little niche, the sort of ecological niche that dandelions and daisies fill. So this is for something that you still want to be able to sit on, and you could do it on, like I said, you could do it in a very small space. You could do it half of your lawn that you want to cut and sit on, and half you're going to let grow long. So yeah, species that will, you mow it every 4 weeks or something in the summer, and in between it can be a carpet of flowers. A few days after you've cut it, the dandelions and daisies, they pop up, they've got more flowers on them, and it can look great because you've got all these flowers that are about, I don't know, 10-15 centimeters tall. It's still great to sit on. It's not like it's going to crush your lovely meadow, and it's nice to have both. So we're trying to establish one at Grow Wilder. Unfortunately, over the winter we let the grass grow long, and it's sort of smothered some of the plants, but we're having another go. I've just put some plants in today. So let's have a look at it. So how are you going to do this? So you've probably heard that it's No Mow May, which is an initiative encouraged by Plant Life, a charity really supporting plant diversity, and obviously plant diversity supports insect diversity. So first of all, mowing less often. Like a lot of lawns get mowed like every week, every 2 weeks, and it's just relaxing that a bit. Try every 4 to 5 weeks. I'm not saying anybody here, like whatever you do, this is, yeah, it's just to mow a bit less. If you do mow it a lot, let it grow a bit more in between mowings. And then adding diversity. So in spring or autumn, what we've been doing is adding new species by planting plug plants in the lawn. So what I've done today is and I'll show you a photo in a moment, our little piece of lawn, it's quite small, it's a circle, it's about 4 meters diameter. I went out there this morning to get a picture for this slideshow. I turned over a little piece, tiny piece of turf, just got the spade, cut around the edges, cut a piece of turf about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 centimeters thick, turned it right over, chopped up so the grass is completely buried for this small area, chopped up all the soil on top, so I've got somewhere I can plant some plug plants in. So the reason we do this is these little plug plants, they're quite small. Grasses are generally quite vigorous, especially in gardens where the soil can be quite fertile. So by turning the turf over, you're giving the grass a bit of space to, or you're giving the wildflowers a bit of space to grow before the grass starts to crowd back in. Actually, I seem to have got a mistake on that slide because it says about low buds. That's about the mowing. So that should have been on the previous one. But the thing about the mowing is when you're mowing it, you get lots of new buds on the plants very low down, so they can do that flowering between mowings. Anyway, so you've turned over your turf, you've planted plug plants, which plug plants are very tiny plants. They're about so big, just little plants, little pieces of compost with a plant roots, plant growing in it. And you can also do seed. It's not something we've tried yet on our one, but you can sow seed, which you can either do in the earlier part of spring or in autumn, which is cutting the grass really short, scarifying. So you get your rake out and you attack the lawn with your rake. You're sort of raking back and forth, go back, turn it 90 degrees, rake it, and you're trying to break up that surface grass roots. So when you throw the seed down, they've got a bit of space to germinate. And again, cutting the grass back gives them that space to germinate. Not something we've tried yet, but it may be in autumn we will try this and try and increase the diversity of our lawn. So what we're trying to do is it's not necessarily a quick process. It's like when you cut it, you're always taking away the cuttings to reduce the fertility a bit, trying to get new species in. The important thing is the cutting and then adding new species.
Shaun, we've had a question about moss. What do you think about lawns with lots of moss?
Lots of moss. They look great. So it depends. Yeah, so lots of moss means the lawn is probably quite damp. It may be partially shaded. What you could find is you could use, if you want to add some plug plants or something, or some seed, you could use things that prefer those type of conditions. So yeah, lawns can be hot and dry. They can be damper. So things like South Hill, which we'll look at a photo of in a minute, is a nice plant for shady lawns. I will show you some pictures of lawns as well. So this picture I'm showing you now is what I did today, basically. So that's a little bit, I turned it over. I've got 3 plants in there in a clockwise direction. We've got bird's foot trefoil. We've got yarrow. So I just looked at a question then. I'll have a look at it in a minute. And then we've got fox and cubs. Fox and cubs have lovely little orange flower. So there they are, sitting in there. I watered them. They've got a chance to root before that grass starts to crowd back in on them. And also by cutting the grass every 4 weeks or 5 weeks, you're again giving space. Because what happened over the winters, all that grass around, we allowed it to grow like to about, I don't know, massive, about 8 inches, 10 inches. And it sort of crowded all the little plants. You can see clover in there, which is very resilient. And there are other plants, there may be plants that will recover now we've cut the grass. So then I've just, like, it's always nice to see a lawn that's got a variety of plants in it. So this is on White Ladies Road. I was walking up there and it's in the front of an office. And I'm just so pleased that they manage it, they cut it and that's all they do. So they don't add any fertilizer, which would just destroy the wildflowers. So you've got what I've been talking about. You've got the dandelions, you've got the daisies, and then if you look, there's lots of buds in the bottom left of the photo, which is a plant called mouse-ear hawkweed. So another plant with yellow flowers, a little bit like a dandelion. And what you can see about it is that it's like a tapestry. It's like, if you look at some like park lawns, or they look like what I call a green desert. They're just one shade of green. There's very little clove or other types of other species in there. the more, like if you look at your lawn and it looks like different colors of grass, different kinds of leaves, and you know you're doing something right. So that's a really nice example. It's just mowed, they just mow it every few weeks and it just looks great. This is another one. I can't remember where I took this one. So not many flowers. A recent cut on this one, but in the middle of the photo you can see a plant called Black Medic. Bottom left you can see a plant called Silverweed because it's silver coloured leaves, and you can see what I'm talking about with the different shades and textures. Like the more diverse it becomes, the more it will look like a beautiful tapestry. Just going to look at a couple more photos of this and I'll go to those questions we've got. So there's 2 photos here. This was in my back garden. I don't maintain it, it's a shared garden, but you can see the different leaf shapes. So it's just been cut, so it hasn't reflowered yet, except for the daisies at the top. But you can see buttercups. You can see the right hand one. I was talking about Southfield for a mossy lawn. All the bottom half of the right hand photo, all of that is Southfield. My garden is quite shady and it is quite damp, and it's got mosses as well. So Southfield is a good plant for that. And I think I've got one more of that. Oh no. So let's have a look at a couple of these questions. So I really want loads of wildflowers in my garden. Yeah, that's what we want. The more wildflowers you've got, the more food there are for insects, the more birds, the more everything, the more you're going to like it. So you want to create lots of wild areas so I can avoid having to mow. So if you want to avoid mowing, we'll talk about mini meadows next. You started with a patch of wildflowers in tubs in the ground, but they don't seem to flower. I'm not sure. It's difficult to answer questions like that without actually seeing it. It's difficult to know what happens without actually seeing it. So I'm not sure I can help on that one. But sometimes people do throw down a packet of wildflower seeds and then they don't know what's sort of fast growing weeds and what's the wildflowers. And sometimes the weeds, not necessarily the sort of the strong growing plants that the seeds are already in the ground, can overpower the wildflowers. But yeah, definitely try the turf turning thing. You've probably still got a bit of chance to do it now. It's the later you get in spring, the less rain you're going to get, or it's going to be hotter and dry. It's going to dry up quicker, but you've still got a chance to have a go now.
Sure. And with the sowing wildflowers in tubs, would it matter what type of compost and soil Amy used?
It doesn't want to be too rich, but then some wildflowers respond to rich soil by growing bigger. So it depends. Like the common things like knapweed, if it's rich soil, it just grows twice as big. So not too much. So it's compost mixed with soil, 50% compost, 50% soil.
Right. Because I've had the same thing when people have given me those seed bombs, and I've planted them at the instructions, and they don't ever come.
Yeah, it's not. That's why I say, like the wildflower lawns, mini meadows, it does take a while to get the things going sometimes. Let's see what else we got here. My flowers I grew from bulbs starting to sprout. That's next. Oh yeah, you've never grown anything. Well, that's great because you can see how much I enjoy growing things. It's a great thing to do. Letting the lawn get too long. So what I was talking about earlier was letting it get long over the winter. So our little lawn here wasn't mown from like October till about 3 weeks ago, and the grass, it's quite a fertile patch of ground, and so it's an uphill battle to turn it into a floral lawn. So but it's quite common. Gardens often have fertile soil in them. And then yellow rattle, not for a lawn if you want to mow it. Yellow rattle has to germinate in spring, flower in late May, and then be left to seed for the next year because it's annual. But we'll talk about yellow rattle a bit more in a bit. Let's go back to the slides. So I just wanted to go to some wildflowers that you can grow in a lawn and they will flower. So we've got things like betony. So these are all native wildflowers. I've tried to choose bits that have got bees on them to prove that they're good for the wildlife. So betony, beautiful pink flower, woodland edge flower, so can be in sun or partial shade. Southfield is the one we were talking about, but for shadier, damper lawns. Beautiful plant. It's got all these little tiny flowers, so lots of nectar for bees. Yarrow on the right hand side, which will do very well in drier lawns as well. what we tend to do when we're doing these seed mixes or plugs, we tend to put a diversity in, and then it'll settle down. The ones that like it the most will thrive. And so if you put diversity in, you've always got something that's going to work well. So fox and cubs, everybody who volunteers in the nursery, I think most people like fox and cubs, and I'm a big fan of it. There's a very close-up picture of it. It's a beautiful orange, quite an unusual colour in our wildflowers. It's essentially like, we've got so many little yellow flowers that are a bit like dandelions. This is like that, except it's orange. And if it likes your lawn, it will spread all over it, and it'll be one of these ones that you can mow 3-4 weeks later, it'll pop up lots of orange flowers. And on the left, I've got cat's ear, and that's again one of these little dandelion ones. It's quite a, I think it's a very nice one. Nice leaves, forms nice clumps, can have lots of flowers, really deep yellow. And I just wanted to put that photo in because that was from the Malvern flower show at the weekend, and we supplied plants to the winning garden. And this little cat's ear, most of the garden was mauves, blues, pinks. This little cat's ear on its little pillar was a real counterpoint. That golden yellow, just tiny bit of golden yellow, was a real counterpoint to the mauves and blues. And obviously the judges loved it because they voted it the best garden in the show. So that was nice for us, all our hard work growing the flowers. What have we got next? So that's it for the moment on. So that's wildflower lawns. So any more questions on lawns? Let's have a look. So yeah, only mow a couple of times a year. So that's more sort of mini meadow territory, which we'll get onto next. So it is also good to have lawn bits of different lengths. Some bits, the main reason we talk about wildflower lawns is some people still want to have somewhere to sit in the summer, nice bit of. And if you've got a bit that you can sit on, and you've got a bit that's grown longer as a mini meadow, it's great because you can sit on the short bit and you can admire all the insects and things and flowers in the longer bit. So yeah, any more questions on wildflower lawns? Looks like that's a no. Okay, so we'll go on to medium. I think we're getting through these slides a bit quicker than I thought, so let's see how we go. I'll say one more thing, that there are lots of other species that you can fit into. I've just touched on a few there of wildflower species that you can grow in a lawn in the same way that can occupy the same niche as daisies. And yeah, there's a lot of species. So we're on to mini meadows. So mini meadows, we call them mini meadows because they're not like huge fields or whatever. They're little bits. So this one in this image is the first year. Oh, question there. Is the first year at Clifton Hill. So I don't know if you know where Birdcage Walk is. Walk down Birdcage Walk and you'll come to this. So this was done by West Bristol Climate Action as a demonstration to show people what you can do on an urban piece of grass. So they worked with the council because it's council land, and they worked with the council. They made a film of it of how to do it, and it's a reasonably sized area. You can see from the scale from the cars and that it's a fair size, but you could do the same thing on a tiny patch in a garden, or you could do it in a miniature version in a large container. So just imagine like a small bit of the blue cornflower, the red poppy, white daisies, white and yellow daisies, and the yellow down the bottom, the marsh. I've got the name of that one for a moment, but yeah, another cornflower. So this is in the first year, so I'll talk about that. Let's just have a quick look at this question. What shall I do with my dandelions that have gone to seed? The main reason, you can leave them because they're great for goldfinches who will come and eat the seeds. So lots of goldfinches and other seed-eating finches eat seeds of plants. And so if you're fortunate, you'll see goldfinches actually coming down and taking the seed. I think the main reason people are not so keen on them is because they don't want dandelion to seed all over maybe their vegetable patch, or they don't like dandelions. Lots of people don't like dandelions. But as you've seen, they're great for pollinators and they're great for lots of species of moth. Amy wants that. Yeah, me too. So that is annual wildflowers. So these are the things. And you've got purple corn cockle in there. So yellow one's corn marigold. So these also got corn in their name: cornflower, corn marigold, corn poppy, corn cockle. These are the plants that used to grow in fields of wheat before weed killers and before they were eliminated by weed killers. They were, which in some ways that it meant you didn't have to try and sort the seed out from the wheat when you cut the wheat, because like corn cockle seeds are poisonous. So there's a good reason not to have them in your cornfields. But this, I'll talk about this planting, that this will be for the first year. If you want this every year, you need to be sort of disturbing the soil every autumn, so all the seed that falls from these annuals can then grow the next year. But for the mini meadows that we're doing, we're looking at annuals for the first year, but then the perennials take long to grow and they start to take over. So let's go to the next slide. So let's go. So this one, so Sophie Bancroft from the Trust, she's been working on the Team Wilder project, and she is much better than me than putting together these little videos. So she put together this little video of us making the mini meadow last autumn at Grow Wilder, just showing the process, so how we did it. So let's have a look. It's only very short, it's about a minute, I think.
This is our spring sowing wildflower mix to start your mini meadow. It contains perennial wildflowers such as blackweed, long carrot, yarrow, and also contains So now we've sown the seed, we're going to put some plug plants in. And the selection we've got here today, we've got some field scabious, a really nice lilac flower. We've got some yarrow, we've got some common knapweed, and some bulk for many moths, we've got some great burnet. So this is the mix we're going to. So putting our plants in, this is common knapweed. It's great for so many pollinators.
For some reason, Shaun, the sound's not working very well.
Let's stop a minute. It's got a lot of, unfortunately, it's got a lot of background noise because we are next to the motorway here at Grow Wilder. Can you actually hear what I'm saying? In the video, I mean.
No.
Oh, that's a bit unfortunate. I wonder why that is then.
I know. I did see something about, yeah, some of it. I could hear some of it.
Yeah, it is unfortunately very loud background noise, and we haven't got any fancy microphones or anything to cut that out. It's just filmed on a phone. Not sure. I'm just going to let it play, but we'll talk about what.
Maybe you could narrate it live instead.
But can I turn the volume off to do that? Can I? Is it dependent on the volume on my?
I think you could still talk over it, and we would be able to hear you better than the video. Yeah.
Let's have a look. So, should we go back? Let's. So tell me if you can hear me. Well, it's quite quiet there, but you can hear me okay. So these are the seeds. We'll just mix the seeds with some soil so that you can, it's quite a small amount of seeds, so mix it with soil so you can scatter it over the area of your beds. So these are the plants. So these are plug plants that we've grown in the nursery. Field scabious, purple, yarrow, white flower, common knapweed. So just a little demonstration of planting the plugs. So we've turned over the turf, got loose soil on top the underside of the turf.
So a bit tight around the plug, you can
Loosen the roots off a bit, pop it in the hole, and just put it in nicely.
You're plugged in well.
Very nice demonstration of planting a plug bomb.
Sticking out to the soil rather than be well in the soil. A little hollow is good. The rain can fall in the hole.
Okay. So apologies for the sound on that. I was aware that it was a bit noisy, but it may be just coming through the Zoom. It makes it worse. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I'll share it when I send the video link, guys. I'll send you the video again.
Maybe when you get the link, it's a bit better. But it is, yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have any fancy technology to cut out background noise or fancy microphones or anything like that.
No, you have to pretend it's a waterfall, the motorway.
Yeah. So that's the mini meadow. That's starting it off. So you can start it off in spring, or you can start it on autumn. And we did this one in autumn, and we filmed 2 little bits to say this is a spring mix, this is an autumn mix, and it said spring in that one, but we actually sowed it in autumn. So we can look at some of the wildflowers that you can have in a mini meadow. So you've got a really wide choice, and generally we're talking about sunny spots. It's the best to be in a sunny spot because you've got more diversity you can use. So some of the wildflowers, a meadow cranesbill, you're probably familiar with some garden geraniums. So meadow cranesbill is like a garden geranium, but it's the wild one. The nice thing about it is the flowers grow up quite tall, probably about a meter tall. So and when they get going, it's a big plant, lots of flowers. This is just a little patch that grow wilder. So oxeye daisies. So I will just mention like things, oxeye daisy, we've got loads and loads of them here at Grow Wilder. They're just not quite in flower yet. They're all in bud and they're going to burst out in the next couple of weeks. One of the easiest wildflowers, if you want something they're pretty much guaranteed, oxeye daisies are your plant. So if somebody comes into nursery, they say, I've never grown wildflowers before, we say oxeye daisy. What you need is an oxeye daisy. We've got the fox and cubs in this photo as well, so they're good in, they can go in the wildflower lawn, but they're great to let them grow taller in the meadow. And you can see what a lovely colour they are there, and quite an unusual colour for British wildflowers. In fact, it's not quite British because it came from Europe about 400 years ago, but there you go. It's spread all over. You will see it around Bristol. There's a really nice garden with loads of it down by the junction, the Eastfield Junction, motorway junction. There's a garden down there. It's just covered in it. It looks amazing when it's all in flower. And it's got this, I've also just mentioned like some wildflowers, they'll have really great names like fox and cubs. And fox and cubs have got a really weird common name in some parts of the country called Grim the Collier. It's not one I ever use, but it just shows you a lot of wildflowers have local names. Different parts of the country, people call them by different names because they're folk names. And it's the common names that we use in the nursery. We've got all the plants are labeled with the Latin names, but the common names are what we use because they are more, they tell you something about the plant, or they've got some story behind them. And yeah, let's see, we've got a question coming up. Is this not a silly question at all? There are no silly questions. Let me just see. Do I literally take it, the rectangle, dig the turf, turn it over? Exactly. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, but that is as simple as it is. And it's all about, like, you turn that turf over, you're burying the grass, but it's all, the roots of the grass are still there, so it will come back in time because meadows have grass in them. But those plants you put in, little tiny plug plants, they've got a chance to start growing before the grass grows up around them. So, right, what we've got next? So here are 2 classics. If you said, give me the first 2 wildflowers you recommend for my garden, it would be oxeye daisy and common knapweed. Both really easy to grow. Both won't mind if your soil is rich, poor. They just grow, if it's rich soil, they just grow bigger. Common knapweed is particularly good for lots of butterflies. Lots of butterflies come to feed on knapweed. There's lots of pollinators. So really nice purple flowers and great for a meadow. Oh, missed one. So this is a picture on a friend's allotment. So we're on to another wildflower with a great name. I think everybody likes it in the nursery for its name, but it's also because it's a great wildflower. So that's the white one. Loads of sort of white umbrellas of flowers, corky fruited, water dropwort. So if you've got one of those in your garden, you've got something to talk about to your visitors. Really lovely plant. It's a perennial, comes up every year. So most of what we're talking about are perennials, come up every year. Lots of pollinators. And also in that picture, we've got a non-native garden flower. So I'm like all through this, I'm not discounting the non-native plants. So Naughtia mastodonica, I don't know if it has a common name, but it's a plant from Europe, very similar to our scabious, comes in rich shades of reds, pinks, blues. Great one to have in your garden along with the native wildflowers. And then the next slide is just to show you. So we've got, this was taken at Grow Wilder, where we've got quite a lot of the corky fruited water dropwort. Just to show, like you plant the flowers, these are some of the things you can draw into your garden. So this is the rose chafer. So it's a beautiful, it's quite big. How long is it? It's about 2 centimeters long, shiny, green, beautiful, and they like big flat flowers. They just sit in there and eat the pollen, I think they eat. So quite common. I saw a magpie drop one the other day, so I don't know if it's going to eat it or decorate its nest with them. So it looks like we come up to the break there, aren't we? Is that right? Yeah. So yeah, just a little note in the chat there, the cockchafer or the maybug is another one like this one, but it's a brown one, and they're again big bugs. They fly around, crash into windows, fly around at night and crash into the windows with the light. But anyway, it's break time, so I'll just put that over to Steph and she can tell us about the break.
Okay, should we have a few minutes just to get a cup of tea or a toilet break? So should we come back at 23?
That's good by me.
Yeah, all right. Okay, let's go. So we've had a question.
We've got the question about multiple ants nests.
Yeah.
An interesting one, isn't it? So how do you respond? It depends what you want. If you want to sit on the lawn, then it's not so helpful, is it? It's having multiple ants nests on your lawn is a good sign of like having a good diversity of your lawn. You may even attract a green woodpecker to come and feed on. They dig into ant hills and feed on the ants. It just depends what you want to do with your lawn, really. If you want it more as a meadow and you're happy to have the ants, it's difficult to say what. It depends on what you want to use the lawn for, really. To me, from a wildlife point of view, it's great. But obviously gardens and growing spaces are about humans and wildlife and having the two together. So, right, where are we? Just a few more flowers for the mini meadows. So we've got a plant called hairy St. John's wort. So you might have heard of St. John's wort as a medicinal herb. There's 3 that we grow at the nursery. Perforet St. John's wort is the one that is the medicinal herb. Hairy St. John's wort is a great one for meadows. Really lovely yellow, lots of small flowers. And then we also grow the square stemmed St. John's wort, which grows near ponds. And then on the right there, we've got the field scabious. And again, as I said, try to find photos with insects on just to show you how much. So you can see a bumblebee there covered in pollen. So it will take that, it will fly off to the next flower, pollen will fall onto that flower, and we get pollination. And the bumblebee gets fed in the process. And sainfoin, I just like this photo. It's a nice photo. Sainfoin, we've got some just going to come into flower fairly shortly in the Grow Wilder. It's a plant in the pea family, like clovers and birds of trefoil. Just a really nice tall pink flower. Yeah. So right. Somebody like sainfoin, excellent. It's beautiful. I think we're going to have quite a lot of it flowering at Grow Wilder this year, so I'm looking forward to it too, because I've brought lots of seed to grow lots more of it, because I think once people see it, they'll want to buy it for their gardens. So I've just put some little stills together from the mini meadow patch that we've done at Grow Wilder. So on the left, so we did it last November. But you can see how long the grass was. We just cut the grass on the patch we wanted to do. Used a mower, cut it down quite low. You got some keen volunteers standing there ready to be filmed doing it, as you saw in the video. So I think about 6, 7 people. So this is definitely a small scale thing. You don't want to be turning the turf on a field or something. So it's for small scale, like at the cathedral. It's for small patches like this. So that's a couple of grass. Then the middle photo. So we've turned over the turf. You can see there's not much. There's still tiny blades of grass showing, but not much. We've broken up the surface. We've sown the seed, as we saw in the video. We mix the seed with a few handfuls of soil or sand, and then scatter the soil all over. We've got a little question here about digging. So yeah, so it's not about digging like you would if you were trying to turn a patch of grass into a vegetable patch or something. You're not turning it, you're not taking a whole spadeful and digging it and turning it over. The way we did it was we cut out little turf. We just put the spade in vertically to cut where the turf is, and then slide the spade underneath to cut a flat turf, like if you were having a turf to start a lawn. So we cut about, I don't know, 8-10 centimeters. So you're not aiming to dig deep and turn over this complete soil. You're just turning that top layer over, so the grass is knocked back. I hope that's answered that question. And I take it you turn in, yeah, so we turned in little patches. You're just taking that little square turf. You could just be like, get your spade, make a little square, slice underneath it, turn it completely over, do that over the whole patch, and then chop up the surface ready to put your seed and plug plants. So we put the plug plants in. So we put the seed in, we sow the seed all over, then we walk all over it to put the plug plants in. And the reason we do that is so the seed gets pressed into the soil. They don't want to be buried, they just need to be in good contact with the soil, or very, very slightly buried. So that's the reason we do the sowing first. So this method that we've used is the same method that, it was slightly different at College Green, but this was what was done at Clifton Hill Meadow, and it's what we did at St Mary Redcliffe. And if you go down by St Mary Redcliffe, I've heard that all the cornflowers are out at the moment. Then so we'll talk about yellow rattle in a moment. So that's the picture I took a day or two ago. Yeah, yesterday. So that's what it looks like now. So difficult to see from the picture, but all the tall flowers that are just about to come into flower are corn chamomile, so white flower. But what you can't really see, at the bottom, you can see the piece of string going left to right, and you can see a plant just along with quite straight leaves. That's corn cockle. But what you can't see in the photo is the perennials, such as the knapweeds. They're in there, but they're still fairly small. And it's the whole idea of planting this mix of annuals, perennials, and yellow rattle, is that the annuals give you a good show in the first year while the perennials are developing. And the perennials, they will come back every year. That's what perennial means. They're flowers that once they're in there, they reappear every year. So I thought that was quite a nice little montage, just to see what I need to do now is like do the picture in a month's time when there should be a lot more flowers. And that's what you need to do, a sequence too, is just keep doing pictures. So what have we got next? There's just a little bit about planting the plug plants. I think obviously it was quite well demonstrated in the video. So when you dig a little hole, plug plants are quite small. They're only about 6-7 centimeters, the root ball. You're just making a little hole. You're not trying to uncover the grass, you're trying to leave the grass where it is. Tiny bit of soil over the top of the plug. What often happens when people plant plants in the garden, they plant them too high and the pot's sticking out the ground, it dries out, the plant doesn't do so well. So it was just about, I do emphasize sort of planting the plugs as best you can. So that's a little knapweed in the demonstration plot you've just seen. What else? So we could talk about yellow rattle. I presume that some people have heard of yellow rattle. So you can only use it if you're doing it in autumn. It's not much use in spring. So if you're sowing seed, if you're doing a mini meadow in autumn, it's good to have a good amount of yellow rattle plant in the mix. So there's a picture of yellow rattle. It's called yellow rattle because when the seeds are formed and the pod is dry, you can rattle it and you can hear it shaking, hear the seeds in the pod. It's also called hay rattle. So this is a plant which you sow the seed in autumn. It germinates in February, March, and then it grows through late May in flower, and then it will seed sort of end of June. And the reason that it's such a good plant to have in all meadow mixes that you're trying to establish is that it is hemiparasitic on the grasses. So often with fertile soils, the grasses will try to dominate because they grow more. It's not that the wildflowers necessarily need low fertility soil. It's that the grasses do better than the wildflowers. So we want to get more flowers. So what it is, yellow rattle, actually it germinates, puts out a little root, and once that root touches on a grass root, it latches on and starts sucking nutrients, sugars from the grass, so weakens the grass. So yellow rattle gets some of its energy from the sun by photosynthesis, green plant, and some from grasses. And it can actually, it can go onto other plants as well, but primarily in a meadow it'd be grasses. So yeah, again, just trying to keep the grass back that little bit to give more space for the wildflowers. And if you go to Clifton Hill Meadow, there's been an amazing, it's the second year, there's so much yellow rattle. And I think to me, this is one of the keys to success of making these mini meadows is having lots of yellow rattle seed. And yeah, so that is an annual plant, so it needs to seed every year. So yeah, so so this mix that the same we've used on the little demonstration plot here is a mix of the annuals. So in the first spring, first summer, you get all the cornfield annuals coming up, and they are quite bright and colourful. And so it means you've got lots of flowers full of pollinators in the first year while the perennials are developing. So here, this is Clifton Hill Meadow again. So got a little list of flowers there. So we've got some of the perennials, or one of the perennials starting to show. We've got the cornflower, the yellow rattle being an annual, got the poppy just showing there. The tall ones, there's one right at the left, not in flower, with like long thin leaves, and there's another one in the middle next to the cornflower. That's the corn cockle, not in flower yet. And we've got the really nice dark blue ones. There's a wildflower called wild clary, and that's one of the perennials. So that would have been one of the ones that was planted from a plug plant. So this was planted in autumn 2021. So it means last year was the first year it flowered, and it looked great. And they're actually doing I don't know, in June, I'm not sure the date, they're doing an open garden. There's going to be somebody there to talk about it as part of the Clifton Open Gardens. And I would say with the West Bristol Climate Action Group, they've really put in a lot of effort to help other groups do the same thing. So they've made a video about it, and they're very willing to share their experience of working with the council to get to work on your local patch of grass. And that's the whole aim of doing it, is to make this lovely patch in Clifton and then to share that experience with other groups all over the city. So I'm looking forward to seeing it this year. I haven't been up recently, but I know there's lots of yellow rattle. And what I would say is that they will be different every year. It may be after 5 years or so they settle down to something about the same, sort of steady state, sort of, but they'll always be different every year. Different weather every year can make some things grow better than others. But with these, when you're trying to establish new mini meadows, they're going to be changing quite a lot in the first few years. Let me see, got another question. Like to grow bark flowering with these. Gorse. It's a bit of a specialist question. Centaury likes, you'd probably grow that, but it's not a meadow plant really. It likes to grow on more open ground. Gorse is a bush. You could grow it in your garden though. Gentian, again, another specialist one. I think I don't know much about Gentian. Yeah, a little bit too specialist for. Where do you get the seeds from? So if you're talking about seeds for the wildflower meadow, the mini meadows, the lawns, we sell them at Grow Wilder. There's places online you can buy them. You can buy meadow mixes online. We have been selling, we've just started this spring doing the mini meadow pack for spring, and in the autumn we'll do a mini meadow pack for autumn, which will be for 10 square meters, and we've been selling that with plug plants, seeds, and instruction leaflet, and the seeds will be the same as what we're talking about here, which is the annual wildflowers, the perennial wildflowers, and the yellow rattle. So we just, it's like we're trying to give you a bit of a recipe to replicate this. So yeah, that was done with turning the turf. Next. So, and then I've just got some pictures of different bits of wildflower meadow just to show you how varied they can be. So this is a wildflower meadow next to the Long Ashton Park and Ride bus route. So if you get the M2 bus out to the Park and Ride, which is at the top left of the photo, the road, this is just showing some of the wildflowers we've been talking about. The oxeye daisy, so this would have been taken late May. You've got the knapweed. So that's the two main ones. I can see some yellow flowers, maybe some buttercups. So like I've already mentioned, oxeye daisy and knapweed, they are two really strong growing plants that are easy to grow. And as you can see, there's lots of the knapweed there, so lots of nectar and pollen for the pollinators. So really nice to see. And then I've got a question about slugs and snails eating some of my young plants. Tricky, very tricky. So in the nursery, we don't actually have that much problem with slugs and snails, and wildflowers are generally pretty resistant. We do only very occasionally in the greenhouse, there is an organic approved slug pellets, because sometimes if we sow a tray of seeds, I've sometimes thought, what's happened? I've sown the seeds, nothing's grown, like 3 months later. But I think on occasion, it's that basically they've germinated and the little snails have eaten all the plants before they've had a chance to grow. So they've eaten the whole tray of plants. So very occasionally, not just on specific trays, there is an organic approved slug pellet that we use, because we get these little tiny snails in the greenhouse. So, but I would just say on that we don't use any pesticides of any sort of Grow Wilder other than that, and it's in the greenhouse. And so we don't have a major problem with pests in the greenhouse, and we don't use any chemicals. It just shows that you don't have to have a major problem just because you don't use chemicals.
I'm not sure if you were here last week, Melissa, but Rosa talked a lot about slugs and snails. And she was saying how she thinks it's down to the pond at Grow Wilder, why they don't have as much of a problem there. So I don't know if you consider that.
That's interesting, because a long time ago I visited a growing space in Brighton where they had a little pond in the middle of their polytunnel, and they said it was noticeable that for a certain radius around the pond there was less slug damage because the frogs and things that live in the pond come and eat the snails. I always think like a healthy ecosystem leaves lots of room for the predators that will feed on these things. And then go out and dusk, that's one thing. I've never actually done that myself. I don't really fancy it, but some people do. They go out and pick them off and then do what they will with them, whether they throw them in somebody else's garden or in them in some way. Melissa's saying she doesn't have room for a pond, unfortunately. Well, I don't know how much room you've got, but a pond doesn't have to be, you can do a pond in a bucket. We've got one a bit bigger than that in the nursery, which is, we've got it raised and it's about 2 foot across, and we've got lots of bog garden plants around it. But you can have a pond in a bucket. You just need some water You can hang a little marginal plant in it, put a tiny bit of pondweed in it. You may have to keep it topped up in the summer and not have it in too sunny a place because it might get too hot. But you can. I was going to try it myself actually. I saw you could get some nice containers in Wilkinson's very cheap, and I thought I'd make a tiny pond in my garden, as I don't have. It's a shared garden, so I don't actually do it. So it's worth to think about. What I think about nematodes, haven't really tried them. It depends how big an area you need to do, because they are quite expensive if you want to do a big area, but I would only say try them. I wish you could pay for each speaker from this course, come do a patch for garden of expertise. Would be nice, yes. Right, let's see how we're doing.
Shaun, what are nematodes?
Nematodes, sorry, I should say for people who don't know what nematodes are. So nematodes are like little tiny creatures. They're not worms, but they may be a little bit like worms. They live in the soil, and there's like probably thousands of types of them, but there are some that will eat other things. So there's ones that eat slugs. They actually, I don't know quite how they do it. They get into the slug and they multiply in its stomach and eat it from the inside and things like that. And you can buy them. They're called biological controls. So it's one alternative for pesticides is biological controls. So it's insects that essentially, or creatures that eat other creatures or disrupt their lifestyles. So you can get nematodes for slugs, and you can get nematodes for vine weevils, which can be a pest in pots. And you can get things like little flies that feed on white flies. And biological controls are used by big, like in organic growing. I know like botanic gardens use them because they don't want to use chemicals in the greenhouses. So nematodes, yeah, little things that eat other things from the inside.
Interesting. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, a lot of horsetail.
Shaun, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I was just linking people to the packs on the Grow Wilder website, and there's quite a few things that are out of stock. For example, the lawn pack.
Oh, the lawn pack. I have to check stock on that. I'm not sure. So the lawn pack, yeah, is a little pack of just 6 plug plants. So you can start small. You can do a little patch like I did today in that photo. That was 3 plug plants. You can do a patch like that and put 6 in. I will check stock and see if I can update that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it might be that if people went to the site, Grow Wilder, things might be there but it looks on the website like they're not.
It may be that I need to update it. That's all.
Okay.
That. Yeah, I will have a check on. I would say the nursery this spring, we've been supplying lots of those little plug plants to South Gloucester Council for their Common Connections project. So we've sent out to them and other people, we've sent out 10,000 plug plants this year already. And it made me, I'm not quite up to date with updating the stock on the website. So a lot of horsetail anyway. Horsetail, so horsetail is it can be a weed if you don't want it. It's a very ancient plant. It's like millennia old. It was like the horsetails when the dinosaurs were around. Its roots go very deep. It's is it good or bad? It's difficult to say. It depends what you want to do. If you want to grow veg, it can interfere with your veg growing a bit. It has benefits that I think possibly growing with other plants can make them stronger. It has a lot of silicon in it, and you can make a horsetail tea, and you can spray this on other plants to help stop fungal diseases. So it may be just growing next to it has that benefit. I kind of think that all plants have some value. We kind of make our human judgments about if we don't want those or we want those. It's difficult to say, is it good or bad? It depends what you want to do with the garden, really. It's difficult to answer that without knowing what you want to do. It's a very interesting plant. It's also a medicinal herb, the garden horsetail. So a lot of our native plants are medicinal herbs. Next. Okay, so this is College Green, so in front of the cathedral. So this is College Green. So this is September. So College Green was done in conjunction. We supplied the plants and seed for several of the beds. It was led by Your Park. So that's Charlie on the right from Your Park, which is the sort of their more formal name is the Bristol and Bath Parks Foundation, and they work with people in parks, not just to grow wildflowers, but in engaging people in their local park, using their local park, getting people to use their local park more across Bristol and Bath. And they led on the meadows at the cathedral, and it was also in conjunction with the cathedral itself, because they own College Green, and the council because they manage it. So lots of people involved, and then each year your park organising the cutting of it. So it's a reasonable sized area, so they cut it with scythes, which is a very nice activity that you can go and learn. Really nice way to cut a lawn, no petrol mowers involved. And then the important thing is to take away the cuttings. So in the garden, use them on a compost heap or whatever. Find somebody else that wants them in a compost heap. So the aim is to, so when those cuttings, you can see there's quite a lot of cuttings there. We don't want those to like squish any new seedlings that are going to be germinating or inhibit them from germinating. And also we're just keeping that fertility down. We don't want to increase the fertility of the soil. We want to reduce it slightly. So yeah, various volunteers helping with that. And so that's an annual thing, happens on College Green every year now, so it's organised. And yeah, you can do that in your garden, usually about September, mid-September. So it's got an interesting name. It's called the Arisings. It sounds quite old-fashioned, really. Remove the arisings. So they started.
So if you sow your mini meadow and it's all thriving, you've just got to wait till September to cut it, and you should do that.
So this is the difference between the wildflower lawn. Is somewhere you're going to cut every 4 or 5 weeks and sit on it. The meadow, you want to let, it's going to grow tall. It could grow 2 foot tall, 3 foot tall. Some of the grasses grow tall, and that weeds can grow to 3 foot, a metre. And so you don't want to be sitting on it because you'll squash it all. And you can also, they can do part and part. So at College Green, you can see where Charlie on the right is standing. She's standing on one of the paths between the beds. So that gets mowed fairly frequently by the council through the summer. And these are rectangular beds. So yeah, and the thing about the longer mini meadows, tall grass, lots of habitat things to live in. The grasses are really important for butterflies. Lots of butterfly caterpillars actually eat various grasses. And if you've got enough room, you can leave some of it uncut over the winter. You can say cut and leave a bit as habitat.
On Twitter, I see people complaining to their councils, this was all in flower yesterday and now it's been mown. But with a meadow, it is actually part of the management, the necessary management, but it's just a fine line between doing it.
It is like it's sort of based on the management of traditional hay meadows, where they're actually cut in July. So they cut it in July, and then I think immediately they put a certain amount of animals on it to graze it. And it's like when we're doing it with scythes and removing the risings, it's like a bit removed from the natural way, like natural meadows that aren't managed. Like you talk about rewilding, the grazing animals are an important part of that, because there's nobody out there, no animals go out and cut the grass, just humans. So this is a bit of an artificial method, really, but we're probably unlikely to see cows on College Green anytime soon. But if you go to Hengrove Mounds, you will see goats. So we've got goats down at Hengrove Mounds. So yeah, that's the nice thing about College Green is this summer will be the 3rd flowering year. So we've got College Green, this will be the 3rd year. We've got Clifton Hill, this will be the 2nd year. And we've got St Mary Redcliffe will be the 1st year of flowering. So these are all projects that Grow Wild has helped with. And it's nice to see the 3 different stages, the 1st, 2nd and 3rd years of flowering. So what else have we got? Oh yeah, so I have been, like I said, it is a little bit biased to sort of having at least 10 square meters, but you can do it on much smaller spaces. You can do a meter squared. You can get an old oil drum, cut it down and put some compost and soil in it. And that's actually annual wildflowers. So again, the cornflower, the corn marigold and the corn chamomile. But you could, again, put some perennials in there as well. And you can have you could do the same thing we've talked about. It would be sowing the seed direct. You're not turning any turfs or anything, but you could cut that in September and you could have a little mini meadow in quite a small space. Just remember to water it in the summer. So I'm quite tempted again with these little containers I saw. It'd be nice to have a little pond, a little mini meadow, sort of miniature habitats really. So right, we've got a question here. Oh, it's just somebody loves it. Yeah, it's great, nice picture. It's just one I found on the internet. It's not one I've grown myself. So let's see what's next. So we've actually come to the end a little bit early, so we've got a little bit of time for questions, but I can probably talk a bit more. So a nice little photo there. That's at Grow Wilder, taken yesterday again. So I did say that also we recommend plants for partial shade. So you can see this is just underneath, top right is the branches of a hazel tree. So we've got the red camping, which was on the ones I said I could see if I went outside the door. And you've got, again, you've got the diversity. You've got nettles in there. You've got the little tiny pink ones. You've got the very small pink ones, are the Herb Robert that somebody mentioned they got in their garden. So you've got 2 pink flowers there. You've got some grasses. You've got a little bit of bindweed. We have quite a lot of bindweed here. Quite a tricky one. And so I also, you've probably heard many times already about Team Wilder, because Sophie has created an amazing resource on the Team Wilder part of the Avon Wildlife Trust website. There's so much resource on how to do things, all the things we've been talking about, ponds, everything really. And then lots of stories of people who are doing it to inspire others, and also a map that you can put your action on and it can inspire others in your area. And the whole Team Wilder thing is about saying Avon Wildlife Trust on its own can't do it, RSPB on their own can't do it, Plant Life on their own can't do it, Woodland Trust on their own can't do it. It's about everybody taking action for nature, whether it's on such a very small scale, like just a little pot, like that little pot we just saw. You have that on your balcony or outside your back door, you will see bees and beetles and pollinators visiting it. So it's just a little bit more thing. So yeah, and then the next level up is doing it in your street, doing it in your community, doing it in your local park, getting in touch with the council, doing your local bit of grass. All makes a difference. I think that's the key, is all making a difference.
Shaun, I've got a question.
Yeah, go on then.
Creeping thyme. Have you ever used creeping thyme as a lawn?
I haven't, no.
Have you ever heard of that?
I would think the thing about that is you wouldn't be able to walk on it too much, because I don't know. We have used wild thyme, and we did grow some wild thyme for a project in Bedminster called the Berry Maze. So they made a maze from fruit bushes, and then they planted things like that around the base. And it's a good plant to grow in cracks in paving stones. But I think if you wanted to grow a lawn of it, it would be quite a challenge.
Right.
There'll be lots of things.
I googled it, flowering lawn, and this is what came up on the internet, and
Okay.
it looks amazing, but I just don't know the reality of how that would.
I would say quite hard work.
Okay.
And you'd be sort of kind of working against nature to try and do that. That's why it's hard work.
Right.
Like things like thymes, they grow on the South Downs, whether they're grazed by sheep a lot and it's a very fine turf, or they grow on like thin gravelly soils where there's not much competition from other plants. Because if you had a big grass, if you let any grass grow, it would just swamp it.
Yeah. And I guess it's better to have variety, isn't it, for more species?
It is, yeah. Like thyme is great. Bees love thyme, but I would have other things as well. And not really a lawn plant. It's a very specialist lawn to have a thyme lawn. Carolyn says, is it too late to plant wildflower seeds in pots? Definitely not. No, you can definitely plant in pots. You can, yeah. The thing about pots is they're small areas, they're easy to water, so you can plant pots. You can right through to the end of May. You can do the annuals or the perennials. So definitely recommend. Somebody's name is just asking about the white flowers. I'm not sure if I can I click on that and make it bigger? No, they look a little bit like three-cornered leek. So three-cornered leek is a non-native plant. The one that I said was invasive but edible. I can't quite see from the photo because it's very small, but if it's got triangular stems, like 3 corners, it's definitely, if the flower stems are triangular, when you cut them, they're definitely a triangle, and it's 3-cornered leek. You've got some violet there by the look of it. You've got a dandelion, and the pink one looks like a Herb Robert, which has been mentioned several times. Lovely little, easily just grows everywhere, all over the city. Got a lot of fern. Don't want the parchment, so I tend to cut them. I don't know if I should. Difficult to say. It might be bracken. Yeah, you can cut it back to help keep it back a bit. Difficult to know. It's probably bracken, but without having any more detail, I don't know. So I think that's pretty much come to the end.
Great. I just wanted to say that if anyone is wondering whether they should do it, just pop down to Grow Wilder, and you might even be lucky enough to see Shaun there, and you can ask him and you'll see the wildflowers there, and you'll be inspired, and you'll see them around Grow Wilder, and it's like the best way to know what you want is to just go there and look at them and think, oh, I want that. Or when you're out walking the streets and you see an insect on a certain wildflower, that's because that's the insect it likes, that's the flower it likes, so get that one.
yeah So yeah, it is like we are aiming to develop more sort of ways of planting wildflowers at Grow Wilder, including the mini meadows, the wildflower lawn containers, mini ponds, big ponds, just lots of ways so you can come and see wildlife and wildflowers in action. And somebody's just answered about dogs. Yes, we don't allow dogs all over the site because we have food growing.
They're allowed in the nursery though, that's right, isn't it?
You can come in the nursery, yeah, well behaved, preferably on a lead. Yeah, well behaved dogs on a lead. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. It's my first online teaching I've ever done, and I've really enjoyed it. So thank you very much. I enjoyed answering all your questions, seeing your pictures, and hearing what you've got in your gardens.
Thanks, Shaun.
Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you.
I can't remember what it is next week, but you probably know, and we will see you then. Night, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye,
Shaun.
all. Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
folks.
Thank you, Steph, very much.
Thanks, Shaun.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you.
Right, I'll stop the recording.